Alright, kiddos, so this video is about World War II on the home front. This is stuff that we haven't quite covered yet in your giant foldable project. We'll come back to some of these things in greater detail after the common assessment, but these are things that you are going to be tested on your common assessment on Tuesday. So be sure to definitely take some good strong notes, making sure that you're following along. I might be moving a little bit fast, so please definitely pause, repeat, rewind, do whatever you need to do to make sure that you have all of your notes correct moving forward. All right, let's go ahead and get started with what happens actually after World War I. So after World War I, the United States enters into a period of isolationism. Here you see Warren G. Harding. He will be president after World War I. And he's going to make that campaign promise of returning to normalcy. So going back, if you remember, after World War I, a lot of people weren't really happy with the decision to involve the United States in this world war, the decision to get involved in these international politics. And so a lot of people wanted to have this no foreign entanglements idea. And that's what Warren G. Harding promised. And that was kind of the way of life that we were experiencing for maybe a decade or so. And you can see the effects of this even at the beginnings of World War II. So here you have a political cartoon. You can see that it was done in 1938, the very beginnings of World War II. There's some conflict going on in Europe right now. We haven't quite entered into World War II since World War II officially will start in 1939. So here we have some people that is arguing that the United States should support Europe. Other people are arguing that we should do nothing. But this overall entanglement is going to lead us into this idea of isolationism. So we won't get involved with World War II until that fateful day on December 7th, 1941. So after Harding, Hoover will become president. Hoover will lose favor due to his decisions that he makes during the Great Depression. So in 1932, FDR will be elected president, and he will be president for the duration of the Great Depression and for the majority of World War II. He is going to be the major person that will make a lot of the decisions of World War II, with a couple of exceptions that we'll talk about towards the end of this video. One of the early decisions that he will make is the development of the Lend-Lease program. Ultimately, what the Lend-Lease program or the Lend-Lease Act says is that the President of the United States has the prerogative or the decision to make about whether or not who he should be allowed to lend or lease materials and weapons to. His argument is that major allies like the UK, like France, like China, are necessary for the defense of the United States. That if they fall, the United States will fall too. And so he thinks that in order to make sure that they don't fall, he has the right to lend or lease the materials that they might need to have a successful war effort against the Axis powers. So in 1941, he is lending and leasing things even before the United States officially enters into World War II. Something else that he's going to go ahead and do is he's going to create the Atlantic Charter with Churchill, who is the UK Prime Minister. And this is a document that ultimately decides what do they want the world to look like after World War II. It's a very fuzzy document in that they want a lot of peaceful things. They want the government and countries to be self-governing and to have the right to do so without fear of other people or other powers coming in to take over. But it is kind of, again, yet another sign that the United States, even before entering into the war on December 7th, 1941, or after December 7th, 1941, the United States is taking active roles in getting involved with World War II. Women are going to have a major role in World War II. Not only are they going to be some of our factory workers and the ones that are at home, making sure that our boys abroad has all the things that they will need to be successful in the war, but they're also going to go ahead and be nurses as well. So here you can see the American Red Cross label for this ID card. So women are going to be working on the front lines, helping our boys who are injured get better. But women are also going to actually be participating in the war effort too, not just from the United States, but from all over the world. Here we have a Yugoslavian sniper, not a Yugoslavian, she's a Soviet sniper. So women did actually take part in the fighting as well as taking part in the factories and taking part of some of the medical aid that was required during war. Executive Order 9066 is another document that you need to be aware about for your common assessment. The Executive Order 9066 is a document that ultimately says that all individuals of Japanese ancestry, whether or not they be citizens or immigrants, will be forced into detention camps or internment camps or something of that nature. It is not as severe as a concentration camp in that they are not executed based off of their ancestry, but it is still a pretty horrible thing to be a part of, namely because a lot of these individuals were forced from their homes. They were under heavy observation, basically like a prison, and a lot of them had done nothing wrong. The government had suspected that there was some sort of Japanese spies that led to Pearl Harbor, and so that's kind of what encourages them to develop this thing, so that if they're constantly monitoring these Japanese individuals, then they have no ability to leak information to the enemy of the Japanese Empire. A lot of when they did come home eventually after the war, they were still subjected to a lot of racism, a lot of prejudice. A lot of people, came home to their homes destroyed, even though, again, these were lands that they owned. Even though people of Japanese ancestry were forced into these camps, there were still Japanese American soldiers that were fighting for the war effort. So to kind of help us understand this a little bit better, we're going to go ahead and watch a short video about the Japanese internment camps. So give me 1 second to set it up, and then I'll see you on the Japanese video.
I thought it was a horrible thing to do, to evacuate Japanese American farmers from their property, telling them that at a certain date they'll have to leave the farm, take one pack or luggage with them, and report to the railroad station and put them to trains to be evacuated to an unknown place, to the detention camps in the West. It was a horrible thing.
It was a kind of strange feeling that here I was fighting for our country, and my parents and brothers and sisters were in a friendly country behind barbed wire. I visited their camp, and it had barbed wire enclosure all around the camp. It had watchtowers every 200 yards or so, and a sentry guard and a guard at the gate. I think that gave us more reason to fight for our country, we had reason to go back and prove to our country that we are loyal. And move back to the West Coast with heads held high and be proud of the fact that we were Japanese Americans that fought for our country even under those trying circumstances.
So it was a pretty tragic time in Asian American history, Executive Order 9066. And just to share like a personal story with you, the year I graduated from college was actually the year that a lot of Japanese Americans actually had to receive their degrees for the first time, even though they were a lot older. Due to Executive Order 9066, people of Japanese ancestry were forced to basically put their lives on hold. So a lot of college students that were of Japanese ancestry actually never got to finish school or never got to receive their diplomas because they were forced into the detention camps. And so the year I graduated, in order to remedy some of the mistakes made in the past, my university decided to give the degrees to those detainees that never had a chance to receive them in the first place. Other things that you need to know about the Common Assessment is especially the impacts that the Second World War will have on the Great Depression. So here you see that initial period of very low unemployment. So this is the unemployment rate between the years of 1927 and 1947. And again, for unemployment, low numbers are good, high numbers are bad. And so here we have pretty strong things in the 1920s. The economy is doing well. People are buying a lot, and that does encourage this idea that the economy is doing well and people are unemployed. But in 1929, we do have that huge stock market crash, and unemployment steadily rises all the way up until 1932. So Hoover is looking like he is not doing a great job. And so in 1932, yet again, as a reminder, FDR is elected. FDR does implement the New Deal programs steadily from 1932 to roughly around 1938. And as you can see, it doesn't really have that strong an impact. And people aren't very happy, and then they're not kind of seeing the numbers that they want to see to to feel good about the economy. Even in 1939, 1940s, we do see this steady decline, namely because we are beginning to lend and lease weapons and things like that to the Allied forces that are fighting in Europe, and so this is going to encourage some level of job growth. But it isn't really until 1941, especially in 1942, since we enter the war, after 1941, relatively like December 7th, 1941, we enter the war around this time, so we do see this sharp decline, and that's what really brings our numbers down, our unemployment numbers down, is that the Great Depression is all of our unemployed individuals can now have a place to work because you can go abroad and fight, or you can definitely work in the factories and assist in the war effort at home. Another key thing that you do need to know about is the Holocaust. Of something that you do need to really consider is that the Holocaust was not an isolated event, in that all of a sudden one day all people identified as Jewish were put onto a train and shipped to these concentration camps. Rather, it was a very gradual growth. So some things that Jewish individuals were facing even before the official concentration camps or things like that was they had their businesses raided by government forces. So here you see the broken windows and things like that. These were raided by government forces. Other things where they had to wear stars to identify themselves as people of Jewish ancestry. And then ultimately, in the end, they are again forced onto these trains where they are going to put into these concentration camps or extermination camps. All right, the last big thing that you do need to know is about why the United States ultimately decides to drop the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Again, they did feel like the Japanese were not going to surrender, number one. Number two, they felt like it was going to be the fastest way to end the war. Number three, they spent a lot of money on the bomb. And last but not least, they wanted revenge for Pearl Harbor and the Bataan Death March, and finally, China as well.